So the market is $7 trillion, and we have a less than a 2% representation in how we build technologies. Being an icon starts with a choice, continuing to look at your goals through the glass ceiling or breaking through it.
We don't like it. We don't even like to look under the rock, but we do have to acknowledge it.
And I asked for help, and a guy turned around and looked at me and said, "You don't belong here."
And that was an inspiration to build Women in Cloud movement, where each and every one of us come together to create active access by serving, by influencing and partnering with each other.
Having to have such kind of platform for women is the change maker, basically.
Your strength is your voice, and don't let anybody tell you differently.
Once you show up and you do the work, and then you can become the next icon in the world.
All right. Good morning and welcome, everyone. We are so happy to have you here for the Closing the Gap in Cybersecurity panel. It is sponsored by Microsoft, and we are really excited to have shared the exclusive Icons trailer. It is actually the debut documentary from Women in Cloud that examines the current state of the gender gap in cloud and AI-driven economy. Icons shares the firsthand experience of women in tech, leaders, founders, political figures, and it showcases their accomplishments of the women in the documentary and how the industry can close that gap to create greater economic access. So very similar to what we're going to be talking about today. My name is Sarah Parsons, and I am an award-winning publicist and a producer, and I'm also a proud team member of Women in Cloud, and it is my honor to be moderating the panel today. So I'm sure we have a lot of burning questions. I know that I do as the moderator for discussion today, but I do want to go over a few things before we get started. We do have 2 giveaways for today, so make sure you're staying active. We have 2 Starbucks gift cards to give away for the most active people in the chat, in the panel today, so make sure you stay on for the entire chat, the entire panel. And we will also be taking some questions at the end of the panel. So to be able to have your question selected, make sure that you put that in the chat in the right-hand side under Q&A in that particular section, not the main chat, so that I can filter through the questions at the end. And yeah, so that's kind of all the housekeeping that I have to start with. To get us started, I'd love to introduce you to our incredible panelists. And I would also say that they are icons in their own right. I'm going to start with Steve Morgan. He is the founder of Cybersecurity Ventures. He is also the editor-in-chief at Cybercrime magazine and an executive producer at Cybercrime Radio. He's the co-author of popular books Hackers, Movie Guide, the complete list of hacker and cybersecurity movies, and Women Know Cyber, 100 Fascinating Females Fighting Cybercrime. Steve is well known for his insightful interviews with tech luminaries and celebrities, cyber law enforcement leaders, F500 and G2000 CISOs, and security leaders, high-profile hackers, and ex-cyber criminals. That's an exciting lineup. Steve has appeared as himself on Vice TV's Dark Side of the 90s documentary, Y2K, Paranoia Will Destroy Ya, and he's a real-life thriller that is known as Y2K Scare. So that is Steve Morgan. Our next panelist is Lisa Plaggemier. She is the executive director of the National Cybersecurity Alliance. She is on a mission to empower people and organizations to stay safe online so that everyone can experience the benefits of technology without worry. Lisa started her career in marketing at Ford Motor Company before migrating to automotive technology and eventually security. Lisa is honored to serve on the U.S. Secret Service Cyber Investigations Advisory Board. She is a University of Michigan graduate, go Blue. And while she wasn't born in Austin, Texas, she got there as fast as she could. I do love Austin, Texas. It is a fun city. And then last, but certainly not least, you probably already know her if you're a part of the Women in Cloud community, is the wonderful Miss Chaitra Vedullapalli. She is an award-winning co-founder and the CMO of Meylah. She's also the co-founder and president of Women in Cloud. In her 26 years of tech, Chaitra has driven billion-dollar expansions for both Microsoft and Oracle, and has been recognized with the Forbes Next 1000 Entrepreneur title, Microsoft's Leadership Award, and as one of the most innovative MarTech leaders by the World Marketing Congress. She has presented before the UN, at TEDx, the Grace Hopper Celebration, and Microsoft Inspire. She's purpose-driven, strategic, high-growth thought leader who seamlessly bridges the business and technology gap to help companies globally scale and drive digital economic development. As you may know, her mission is to generate 1 billion in new net economic access for women entrepreneurs and professionals by 2030. So that is our incredible lineup. I'm so excited to chat with all of you guys today. I have all my questions lined up. To get started though, I want to start with the current state of where we're at. To kind of set the scene for everybody here today, whether they're just stepping into cybersecurity or they've been in this world for a little while. I think I want to examine where we're starting, because in 2024, we kind of face, a lot of security teams face new opportunities, obstacles with geopolitical tensions, historical worldwide voting year, stricter compliance mandates, and the rise of generative AI. It seems like the industry is predicted to transform in new and unexpected ways, possibly exciting ways. And one of the ways that we are all personally hoping to see that change is in closing, or at least narrowing, the diversity and gender gap in cybersecurity. So before we get to this future that we're predicting, that we're hoping on, I want to take a look at where we're at. So I'm going to start actually with a question for Steve. What are the potential consequences of the gender gap in cybersecurity, both for individuals and industries as a whole?
So first I want to ask, am I in the running for that Starbucks card?
Yeah, Steve, get in there. You're the first one talking.
So I'm going to speak for myself today, but before I do that, I want to answer this first question by quoting someone who's been an inspiration for myself from media. A lot of you may know her, Sylvia Acevedo. She's a rocket scientist, former CEO at the Girl Scouts of USA. She was responsible for launching the Girl Scout badges, the cybersecurity badges, and we now have 300,000 girls in our country who have earned them. She wrote the foreword to our book, which you mentioned earlier, and I think she really answers what you asked about. So I'm just going to read what Sylvia has to say. As the world is being rewritten line by line and recreated around data every day, it's critical that women are at the table making decisions and contributing to our lines of defense. It's an absolute national imperative we have a diversity of input and perspective when developing security tools. The more perspectives we have, the fewer blind spots and unknowns there are. The safety and security of our country depends on more women raising their hand and engaging in the fight. And what I'll add to that myself is, if we don't have enough, insofar as the consequences, then in the rooms where cyber laws and policy are being made, diplomacy, where research is developed, we're going to be missing half or 25% or whatever that number is, where we don't have representation of women.
That's beautiful. I love that quote. I was like, when you said everybody needs to speak up and raise their voice, that really resonated. I know that this particular community audience is not shy about raising their voice. So we have a great group of fighters on that end. Chaitra, I saw you nodding your head as Steve spoke. Did a thought come up for you when you were listening to that?
First is, I'm excited that we have like two icons with us, Steve and Lisa. So thank you for joining us. And I also want to acknowledge a couple of people, why we are all here. So this whole thing that is happening in driving the inclusion and diversity and representation in cyber, AI, and cloud is for three women who came together. One is Debbie Utek and Laura Newman and Nagma Menguleri. So all these people coming here to make this possible, ensuring that the inclusion not only just happens by talking about it, but making things happen. And Debbie was the one. She said, I have some scholarships. Can we test it out and see, can we make it tangible and make it accessible for this educational programming so we can, really move the needle. So when Steve was talking about that quote, it was like, it takes those icons who understand the need and they step into the place where they are and not afraid to unlock opportunities for others, to create a whole new pathway for everyone. So I just wanted to acknowledge Debbie, Laura, and Nagma for making that possible. And it was Debbie's birthday week, so I want to also say happy birthday, Debbie. I know you're in the participant too, so we want to celebrate who you are as an individual to making a phenomenal difference for lots of people.
I love that. I love highlighting the people who are making a difference, including everyone on this panel today. It's why it's so special is, it is educational. It is so nice to have this chat in a live way so that people can, like I said, put in their questions in the chat as we're talking so that at the end we can have, answer these from the people who know the most about the industry right now. As you're talking, Steve, it made me think of a question. And this one I'm going to direct to Lisa is, what are some of the main factors contributing to this gender gap in cybersecurity, and what are they looking like? How do they manifest in the industry to create that gap?
I think we need more women to be able to drop their imposter syndrome and not be afraid to be the one that's, there's this concept of being the first one in the room, right? I'm afraid to walk into that room because there's nobody that looks like me or is the same gender or whatever. And I have to be honest that 30 years ago, when I walked into a room full of men at Ford Motor Company, because automotive was almost 100% male in the late 90s and the early 90s, it didn't even cross my mind. And I don't know if that's because of the way my parents raised me, or I didn't even notice that I was the only female in the room. Like, I just ignored it. It wasn't even on my radar. And I think if we focus on it too much, like, why am I the only female in this room? Then, it's anxiety inducing to approach things that way. And what you really need to be focusing on is the task at hand, right? The other thing that I think, where I think the math just doesn't pencil, like things just don't add up. I think the idea of having female leaders mentor other women is fantastic. But we'll never get there if we're just waiting for women to mentor other women. The math doesn't work because there's not enough women to mentor all the women that are coming up.
Yeah.
So I think it's more about men understanding how to mentor females. And I can say from my personal experience that the best bosses I've had who've done the absolute most for my career were both men.
Wow.
It was not any of the women that I worked for. It was the men, and they were men that understood how you might manage and coach a female a little bit differently than male counterparts. And I say that in a way, I don't think it's discriminatory, but we're not the same. Guess what? Like, diversity means that we're not all the same. It doesn't mean that things are bland and everybody's, sort of equal and even. And it means that that we're all different. And I used to be a part of a thing called the Leading Women on Automotive years ago. And inadvertently, we were doing a one-day event, a live in-person event before COVID. And it had come up in every speaker's talk, just sort of inadvertently, the theme ended up being that women are more risk averse. That if you say to a woman, if your boss says to you, like, I think you're ready for this job, a promotion, and you think you're only 80% ready, you're going to say, like, oh no, I'm not ready for that yet. Whereas if your boss said to a man, I think you're ready for this job, he's probably going to say, yeah, bring it on, right? Like, I'm good enough. I'm ready to go. Let's go.
That's so true.
I think you have to understand that when you're mentoring a female, that when you're supervising a woman, when you're a male manager, I think you have to realize that sometimes the situations like that manifest themselves very differently, and you have to handle those situations differently. So I think it's about men getting better at managing women.
I love that. Chaitra, Steve, do you have anything to add to that? Because I think having, you know, and Chaitra's big on this too, women in cloud is bringing in allies, men and people who identify in different ways to lend a helping hand, to give their expertise so that it does create that diversity that's very well prepared and ready to take on bigger roles, more advanced roles.
Sarah, Lisa, it resonated with me because I was also, early in my 90s, my bosses were all men, and they really mentored me well. But there was one manager, I would say he was a director. He said, the conversation was, I was having is like, this is not working or something. He said, it's not about what's working. It said, you need to think about from an angle when you come to working for a company is it's not what the company will do for you. It's what will you do for the company. Until that equation is right, you will be fine. As you need to come with a mindset is how you're going to serve the customers that we are serving. The company is not built for serving you. You are built to serve the society, to save a life or transform a life. And that particular reset in my mind was a transformatory, because at that time, it was not about a man or a woman. It was more about how can we take the solution and transform the lives of the customer in the market that we are serving. So that particular, advice, if every woman can take and go into the workforce saying, I need to master my skills. I'm going to show up. I'm going to contribute to my team and to my company. They will shine up to the top. Yes, there will be a bureaucracy, politics, everything, but that's what the skilling comes in, the leadership skilling comes in, the language of inclusion comes in. So you're not talking about, why am I the victim? You are not a victim. Nobody
Can't approach it that way. Yeah, I got very similar advice from my father-in-law, God rest his soul. He was my mentor when I was in college. He actually got me my first internship at General Motors. And he said to me, always make sure that you're putting in more than you're taking out. Very, very similar.
I love that. Steve, it made me think, you've written that book about the 100 women who are really changing the landscape in cybersecurity and cybercrime. Was there any similarities there that like Chaitra and Lisa are talking about?
Well, I guess as the the man here on the panel, I can say we need each other. So in order for me to be effective as a leader or a contributor, I really need access to women who can give me a perspective. I almost didn't write the book, and I was very hesitant because I don't want to be a man who thinks he knows something about women or come off that way. And I was on a phone conference with Ann Johnson from Microsoft, and I spoke to some other women about this too. And she said, we need your voice. You have to, participate. And ultimately we produced a documentary about the book. But, women are my go-to when it comes to this topic. Yes, we write it, we produce it, but all of the input, all of the feedback is coming from women. And I come from a 50-50 place. I have 6 kids, and, half the population are females. I have 3 daughters, so they teach me a lot about, how to interact with women as well.
I love that. 50-50 population. That's very cute. I see the chat gave a lot of claps and thumbs up during that portion. A lot of great comments as well. Lori shared men getting better at managing women, being the door openers and allies is a positive systemic change. I see Talin said, the gender gap persists unless men invite us into the room. So I feel like everybody's very much resonating with this, is like, yes, we need that. We need each other for this to thrive and get better and narrow the gap ultimately. For Chai, something came up that I was thinking is, because you're the president of Women in Cloud, and this is sort of your thing, is like you are actively seeking how to close this gap, and you are always looking for programs and ways to do this. How can companies and organizations create more inclusive and equitable work environments to support women in these roles?
Sarah, I would say every company can take responsibility for bringing inclusion in the work they do, because they have to represent their customer base. And the organization should be looking exactly like what your customer base should look like. I look at like 6 areas of what that inclusion or integration looks like. One is your hiring practices. That's very important to look at how you're hiring. And if you're using AI, is it inclusive AI? There's no bias in it. So because the cybersecurity roles will come up a lot in the future. So recruiting will be very, very difficult because you have to find the right talent for the right role. So you will be employing AI. So how is the hiring practice going to be there? The second one is retention and career advancement. The people who are in your company, you need to ensure that they are prepared for the type of cybersecurity attacks and challenges that companies coming. So when you're giving the readiness play, you're making it accessible for everyone. Right now, I'm looking at the AI and cyber. It's not being given to the women who are within the company. So they're seeking from Women in Cloud for scholarship. The company should be able to pay for it. Take care of it, right? That's kind of the inclusion, even the readiness piece. The third one is the inclusive work culture. So if there are challenges that the company is facing, inviting women into those the rooms where the massive discussion is happening around what the cyber issues are. I can tell you is like all the hyperscalers have women and men in those rooms talking about how to protect their infrastructure and the customer infrastructure. The fourth one is the gender pay gap. That one needs to be talked about it, and the HR needs to take full responsibility for driving the conversation with the CEO and the board, and that is not happening. They are afraid to have that conversation. Women can say we need more money, but it doesn't. But it's a HR policy that needs to be addressed. And the fifth one is the leadership commitment. It needs to start from the board, the CEO, and the entire executive leadership to embrace that this is important. And the last one for me is the work-life integration, because cyber issues are 24/7 issues. So if a woman is working on it, allowing them to go back home to take care of the kids and still work on that issue is very critical. So when I think about it, it's looking at all the pieces and then saying the 50% of the demographic, which are women who are working on the cyber piece, they have a very different requirements to make sure that they can still participate, but it's still inclusive to accommodate that, because the cyber issues are going to be more difficult, more tougher, and it's going to be hard. And if you don't make flexibility and adaptability policies for them, they won't be able to even engage in that discussion, because there is a very specific need for them. So that's kind of my thing. So we always are looking for companies where we want to partner with them and say, work with us. We can make the scholarships available. We can bring the leadership. So you don't have to build everything from scratch. And we'll bring partners and partners like Lisa to come in and have a discussion to really move the needle on that. So you don't have to do it alone. It's just the integration piece.
I love that. Lisa, Steve, do you have anything to add to that? I saw you guys both listening.
That was a really nice list.
It was.
She was really thorough and concise. So no,
Yeah.
I don't have anything.
Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah, I see some great comments coming through too. I just want to highlight for you guys is that somebody said, Steve, thank you for being such a great ally. Chai is one of my heroes. You guys are icons. So I just wanted to share some of the love from the chat. Seems like everybody's really resonating with what we're talking about. So I feel like we kind of set the stage for what's happening, where we're at, some of the reasons that is happening and how we've gotten to where we are. From here, I'd like to sort of pivot and look to moving forward, looking into the future. When it comes to closing this gap, I want to explore some of the questions I have written down about the challenges that are out there right now, and lessons we can learn from the past so we can avoid these mistakes in the future so that we are making progress and not staying stagnant. My first question is actually for Lisa. What lessons can be learned from other industries that have successfully narrowed this gender gap, and how can we apply those to cybersecurity?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have some perspective on that because I came from, I spent the first 10 or 15 years of my career in automotive. And that was before cybersecurity was even a thing, because I have some gray hair on my head. That industry has changed substantially in my lifetime. I mean, it doesn't look anything like it did when my dad was in that industry in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and then when I got in there in the 90s. When I first started at Ford, for example, in late 1989, I'm really going to date myself, women and minorities actually got more frequent coaching. They were very purposeful about it. We got better career planning, more frequent career planning. You could sit down and talk about a 1, 3, and 5 year plan with your supervisor. I don't know that anybody's doing that anymore for anyone, much less.
That sounds incredible. I was like, that's super cool.
It was really, really valuable. And it wasn't anything written in stone, but you just had more frequent feedback. And I think that's really, really helpful, especially if you're trying to get past imposter syndrome, if you're trying to feel like you belong there, all those things. Like getting that feedback more often, especially if it's largely positive, really bolsters your confidence, and that can be super helpful. And then you also see a future for yourself in that organization. And I think too many organizations have got away from that. I mean, I know, my parents' generation, they stayed at the same place for 30 years, and that doesn't happen anymore. But I think the pendulum needs to swing back a little bit more to the middle, where we're actually developing employees again. Because right now, if we, we constantly hire from the outside instead of promoting from within, there can be that can foster a bit of an old boys network, actually, because when a lot of companies go outside, especially for senior positions, it's usually through a connection that somebody else in the C-suite has, or somebody knows somebody that knows somebody, and you miss an opportunity to grow the talent in your own organization when you're not more purposeful about that. So that was the thing that impressed me the most about Ford Motor Company back then, was that they were really purposeful about it, and they thought what they were doing made a lot of sense. It's not going to happen by itself. It's not going to happen because a few people think, oh, we should do this. Like, it has to be institutionalized. And that was the thing about the program that I was a part of, is that it was institutionalized. Like, HR and leadership said, this is what we're going to do, and here's how we're going to execute. And so I think you have to be really, really intentional and come up with a plan, because it can't just be, like I said, people mentoring other people in the field and everything. Like, that doesn't scale, and that doesn't go as fast as we might want this to go.
Yeah, I love that. It definitely connected to what Chai said earlier about in her bullet points about the HR and things like that, about how it has to be part of the system as a whole, and not just, consistently people taking it on as a side project or as a kindness to somebody they know, and mentoring friends, or, those things are all great and all wonderful, but the change has to happen at that macro level. Kind of bouncing off of that, I'm going to go to Chai now. Are there specific challenges that you can think of that women face in advancing to leadership positions, or barriers, would you say, that they face? And if so, how do you think that they can overcome it? Or have you seen them overcome these things in reality?
First is, Lisa, whatever you said was spot on. So I completely agree with you on that. It has to be institutionalized in how we do what we do. Now, coming to leadership stuff, when you think about the tech leadership is one of the most advanced leadership on the planet. And I think right after the politics, right? The politics is very complex, and then comes the tech piece. To do that leadership, acquiring of that leadership, it's not being taught at school. It's not being taught at colleges. It's not being taught within the company. People expect you to come in and they expect you to say, you lead, but nobody knows how to lead that work. So the you cannot lead with activism. You have to lead with diplomacy. You have to lead with collaboration. You have to lead with collective mindset. And that's a unique skill because you're being raised as a me generation, like it's me about me. But when you come into the tech leadership, it's all about we mindset. So you have to bring everybody together. So that's a very strong acquired skill set. So now how do you gain that? It's not by just bringing a coach to help you. It's really giving them as a live examples of bringing, because they have to have role models. So the big challenge is there's not a whole lot of role models to look up to. And even in the politics, you can't look up to good role models. Look at the politics where it's going. So you don't really have good role models looking at. So then you have to look at where do you find the right role models to really amplify the new leadership skills that is required for cross-group, cross-industry collaboration. The second one is the bias and the echo chambers, the way the social media is working, the way the conversation is going. There's a lot of echo chambers that's happening. So you're not really open to bringing diversity in your conversation. So that's also is happening. So that can show up with on your leadership, who they are hiring, what they're doing, what policies are looking. And the third one is my favorite one is the work-life balance. During COVID, all the companies allowed everybody to work from wherever they wanted to, because at that time there was a mandatory that the work has to go and you can go and work. But as soon as COVID is done, everything is changing. There's a mandate for women to come back, leave there all the stuff that they changed to accommodate the world that they need. And now you're asking them to come. It's not right. You should be accommodating. Yes, it is hard to really drive a high productivity in a remote work situation. But during COVID, people work 400% or 500% at that time. If they work 200%, it's okay. We are still there working, right? So I would say those are kind of my three, challenges for the industry is the bias issues and the echo chambers. Second is the work-life balance. Really need to figure out, not mandate policies. We're saying if you don't come to the corporate office or where the company headquarters is, you won't get promotion, you won't get benefits, you will be asked to leave the company. That's rude in general, in my opinion. And then the lack of role models is you really have to find the role models and start working with them and collaborating with them. But collaborating is not just ask for advice, but really contribute to the role model, because you get to learn from them. Work on a project with them, on a micro project, which allows you to move the needle.
I love that. That made me think too, back to your book, Steve, were there any specific challenges that stood out to you from any of the women that you wrote about that you had seen them overcome that sort of came to mind?
I think each and every one in the Icons movie, everyone had exactly the situations, including me, going through where we were not given access to opportunities. We truly were not given. But what we had to go back and reflect upon and say, okay, what is stopping us from going? If it's the person where the conflict is, it's very easy. That means you don't have to work with them, right? It's very easy. But if it's organizational policy, that's the time you have to say, does your value system align with the organizational value system? Can you step back and course correct to a different way and move to a different path? And that's where the adaptability quotient comes in. So that's why I say is the leadership piece is really around having the adaptability, having diplomacy skills, having capability to negotiate, collaborate, more of a we mindset. Those are kind of the skills. So I ask everybody in the Women in Cloud is to be part of the insider circle, join, skill up, and make sure you're leading, because when you become the new role models for the world, and as you're becoming the role model, you are influencing 100,000, 1 million people in the world by doing the right things. But that kind of programming is something needs to be created within the organization and also in the communities.
Yeah. Steve, did you have anything to add?
Well, Ron Green is the former chief security officer at MasterCard, and he is a huge advocate for women in cyber. Ron says you can't be what you can't see. And for me, that's what it's all about. Unfortunately, for the past couple of decades, if you do a Google search, an internet search on women in cybersecurity, you're not seeing what you should be seeing. What you're seeing is the problem, and that's okay. That's good. We need to highlight the problem. But
Sure.
what we need to see much more of are role models. Now, you were talking about leadership before. We did a statistical survey. 14% of the Fortune 500 CISO positions are filled by women. The rest of them are filled by men. Now, we could sit here and talk about why is that? It's a big problem, but we only have so much time. So I'd much rather talk about, the 85 women who are unbelievable. They're some of the top cybersecurity experts in the world. Who are they? How did they get into those positions? You can go to CISO 500 and you can see who they are. We have set out as a media property to change that. Now, we're not going to take on Google and we're not going to change all of the results, but one at a time, we have compiled lists of women-owned cybersecurity companies. We've published hundreds of them. And if you do a Google search on, women-owned cybersecurity companies, you'll find them. There are hundreds of associations for women in cybersecurity. And we have a list of those. And I think we need to produce these role models. You're right. There's not enough of them. So we can't just sit back and say there's not enough role models. We have to go out, hunt them down, profile them. That's what we're trying to do with our media, interview them so that when you do a search on women in cybersecurity, they show up. I had to show that to one of my daughters who thought the cybersecurity field wasn't for her because, she had the image of, the hacker, in a hoodie and, male programmers and what have you. And I said, no, wait a minute. You need to watch these YouTube videos and look at these, they're young. Some of them are grandmoms, some of them are moms, they're all over the map and they're incredible. So it's not easy, but we need more of that. We have to talk about the problem, but I think we have to talk much more about, who are the women in cyber that we can show to other women who want to get into the field.
I love that. And Steve, all that information you talked about, all that data that you guys are so wonderfully putting together, that's on your website?
It is, yes. Yep.
Amazing.
Cybersecurityventures.com. Yep.
Okay, great. Cybersecurityventures.com. I'm going to pop that into the chat so everybody knows where to go because it's such a great resource to take advantage of. All right. Just to tap on the problem a little bit more before we move forward with solutions. And this would be open for anyone who comes to mind. I thought of Steve first, but he just gave us such a great, a great list of resources. But I wanted to know how can we actively challenge the stereotypes and biases that are currently in place that may discourage women from pursuing or even advancing in the field. I think what you started with, Steve, is like, hey, take a look at this information, like watch these videos, see these women in action that could be you.
I think so. And I think it came up earlier. We were talking about HR. But there are also a lot of companies, there have been these statistical surveys in the past about how many women are in our field, and it's not easy to size that up. I think different organizations do the best they can. A lot of it is survey-based information, and the easiest surveys are with the biggest companies where you have the most participants and you could try to make some sense out of things. But it's the small businesses that represent an enormous opportunity to employ women in cybersecurity. And a lot of those voices aren't heard, but you also don't have the same structured HR policies. You don't have HR managers. If you're a company with 10 or 15 or 20 people, chances are you're then dependent on that CEO, that business owner to have the proper view and to, reach out and, create equal opportunity. Exactly how that happens, honestly, I don't know, other than for myself, I'll participate in these types of forums and, try to raise more and more awareness, but maybe our other panelists have an idea about that.
Yeah, I'd love, if any ideas were sparked from the question, I'd love to hear. Lisa, Chai, if you guys have anything.
I'll have Lisa take it if she wants.
Okay.
No, nothing. I'm thinking back through your list, Chai. So, I mean, I think there's a huge problem with the media for cybersecurity in general, right? Especially the consumer media. When something bad happens, when there's a data breach that hits the news, especially the ones lately that have been affecting healthcare, there's the picture of the hacker in the hoodie in the dark room, and those look very, very masculine, right? Everything's, black and dark, and you don't see a woman in a bright dress at a computer. Your assumption is that hacker in the hoodie is probably masculine.
Yeah.
And then some of the talking heads that get interviewed are more frequently male than female. And then if you look at TV and movies, which Steve has done a really good job of doing, I can't think of a single. I mean, there probably are some, but I can't think of a single character in TV that's been portrayed, in cybersecurity as a female. So I think. Consumer media, though, is really difficult to change. I mean, that's a really high bar. It's one thing for us in the B2B world to look at the problem and try and make changes in the way we portray things, but trying to get the folks that produce television shows and movies to make those changes. I honestly don't know how we do that. I mean, it's getting Hollywood to pay attention to this problem for all the lip service that they give it. At the end of the day, I think, because they also discourage young women from going into the field. They discourage because those images. It discouraged me from entering the field because I'm a soft skilled person, right? My last job before this was chief marketing officer at a security company. So I very often felt when I was first recruited into security by a chief security officer, I said, what do you want with me? I'm a marketing person. Like, what in the world am I going to do? Like, I don't fit with the rest of that team, because I had no exposure to seeing women in the field and how much need there is for people with soft skills to communicate. And I was thinking as you were talking, Steve, about Ron from MasterCard. There's a woman on the team there, Jen DeBerge, who does all of their security communications. Really talented, soft skilled person, and there's a huge role for her to play on the security team. So, I don't know how we get Hollywood to change their mind. I mean, the series that we just produced, Cubicle series, I'll throw it in the chat.
Yeah, please do.
That's got male and female characters. We decided that have equal time there.
Well, we did have Angelina Jolie hackers back in 1995, so maybe we just need to I don't know, throw at least one name there, and I'm sure there's more because we don't want them not to get the proper attention.
Yeah, and adding to Lisa and Steve, Sarah, you're spot on the Hollywood piece. The thing when you look at every movie, because that's why we got into the Hollywood by creating a movie fund, so we could start changing what a narrative should look like from a woman who are in the tech industry, right? So when you think about it, every show that I've seen, if there's a hacking happening, the women are doing pretty good, but at the tail end, they give up. And I'm like, why? They can actually fix it. They have been in that problem till the please, right? But, the antagonist comes and literally beats the woman. And I'm like, what happened? They should be the protagonist there, right? So it's just one of those things. I sit there and say, why did they flip the story that women are weak in the cyber roles? It's not. We can actually solve it. We can identify the issue. We can address it. So it's really around the story portrayal on the big screen that kind of creates a narrative in your head that we are weak, but it's not. And we just, did an American Underdog movie, and we had a woman actually lead a role of a gym owner, and she winning the award. It was really amazing because I said, that's how you do it. It's the power of money, power of story. You combine these two, and you can actually inspire a lot of people saying, I can become one like that. And it's not that hard. You just have to work at it. But yeah, the storytelling needs to be flipped a little bit from the tech industry for sure, from the Hollywood industry for sure.
The chat kind of went crazy. They were like, wait a minute,
Yeah.
there were a few out there. They were like, Penelope Garcia from Criminal Minds and Felicity Smoke from Arrow. So thank you, chat, for coming through. There is some representation.
The Net was one of my favorite movies with Sandra Bullock. Not to
Yes,
throw
I
another
agree.
name in there.
I agree.
No, I think the names are good. It gives you something to be like, maybe I've not seen that. I would love to see a different representation than the dark hoodie male figure in a dark room.
Steve, are you and Lisa, are you okay? We can do is a joint post on the top 5 to 10 movies every woman should watch if they are going into cybersecurity roles. And if you're all interested, we'll make that happen and bring the list for you because it's such a cool list to watch them.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's a cool
There's
inspiration.
a lot of movies in here I haven't seen, so that's why I
Me
couldn't think of
too,
anybody.
and
Yeah.
TV shows as well. So that's nice too.
Yeah.
I want to get to my favorite part of the panel though, because I know we want to end in a timely manner, so we're not taking up everybody's Friday. I want to talk about next steps for companies, for organizations, for the people on this panel, so we can actually get started in filling the gap. Steve, I want to start with you. And I want to talk about the role of education. What can that play in encouraging young women and girls to enter the field of cybersecurity?
Well, I mean, education, mentorship programs, they're critical, but I don't know that we could wait for, the girls to walk in the door. I think it has to be proactive. I think we have to go out there and recruit them. I think the Girl Scouts of the USA have done an amazing job. I mentioned earlier, 300,000 girls have earned badges, and that's only, I forget what year it was. I want to say it was 2017. I might be off on that, but it's not a very long time. And it proves that if you roll out the red carpet, if you, make the invitation, the interest is there. But it requires a lot of work. It's a lot of effort. So, I'm not sure, what other programs are there. I think you need, willing participants. We are, everybody on this panel is, and we have to be on the lookout. And then I think we should all think about adopting a girl if we can. And it's not something that I'm going to talk out loud about or name names, just privately doing what we're doing. When we identify, young women, girls who we could potentially help, have a dialogue and, do whatever it is we can to impart, some education on them, informally. And we could also, share a lot of shortcuts. So I was talking actually recently to somebody and telling them some programs I was personally familiar with, the Google Cybersecurity Certificate Program, a couple programs on Coursera that they may not have otherwise been familiar with. So, sometimes I think it's just reaching out and sharing what we can, even if it's just, one girl at a time.
I love that. In the nature of reaching out, I think part of that is, let's talk about retaining, right? We're reaching out, we're getting people involved, and now we want to retain those women who are in cybersecurity. Lisa, has there been any successful strategies that have been implemented thus far that have helped in this retention? And is there anything that should be implemented more widely?
I agree with everything that Shai said earlier about remote work and the organizations. I mean, there's a very large one here in Austin that was in the news lately about requiring people to come back. I think that's a mistake. As she said, I think remote work is really, really important, especially for working moms who are working parents in general, but working moms in particular that are juggling just a lot of different things in their lives. The time spent commuting in your vehicle is a waste, unless maybe you're listening to a podcast. I also think for security teams, it can be completely inappropriate to have, especially open plan offices where, I went to full-time remote work when I lost my office with a door and a window, and we went to completely open plan. And I had folks on my team doing, looking at emails from DLP alerts. You don't need somebody walking behind you seeing that you're doing that. You don't need to be on an incident bridge for, 2 or 3 days in a row. Some of these really massive incidents that are time consuming. and the investigation, everything is going round the clock. I mean, I remember my first Thanksgiving that I was in security, I spent it on a bridge because I had to do incident communications for the executives, and it was an incident that took 3 or 4 days for us to get through. And so if I had to be in the office or stay in the office for any period of time, like, forget about it. I was able to do that from home and somehow still get Thanksgiving dinner on the table. So I think it can be really, or if you're doing forensics, an employee investigation, like all those things, like it is so much better to be doing that in the privacy of your own den than to be sitting in an open plan office where people can walk around and go, hey, what you doing? Because some of the things you do, the rest of the organization doesn't need to know about. I also think that the sort of, okay, everybody back in the office now commandment is a great example of trying to be equal or fair or have things be the same. I have 2 20-something daughters, and I have told them both, y'all need to be in the office as much as you possibly can. One of them is in the office 5 days a week. The other one's in the office 3 days a week. And it's because they have a lot to learn. And they graduated college during COVID, and they've never been in that atmosphere before. And, they need to start with some humility and be there and be around other people and have water cooler conversations and all those things, because there's so many other like social cues that they need to pick up on that you're not necessarily going to get in a Zoom call, and relationships that you're not necessarily going to get from a Zoom call. So I think it really depends. I wish every manager had the ability to say, well, you don't need to be here because you work great remotely, but you know what? You just graduated from college, and I'd really like to see your smiling face every day. Like I wish there was the ability, the freedom to discern who would benefit and what kind of roles and what kind of people would benefit more from more time in the office. But I think in general, giving all working parents of flexibility it gave me the ability to go volunteer at my kid's school in the library 1 lunch hour a week. And if I had to be in the office, which is 15 miles away, I couldn't have swung that. So I'm a big fan of remote work myself.
Yeah, it goes back to that work-life balance that Chai brought up too. Is like, that's so important for maintaining retention, retaining people, maintaining the jobs, and keeping them there.
Right.
Speaking of things that we can do, I actually want to pass it to Chaitra because she has something to share that's super exciting. And I want to get into the specifics of it really quickly. But I want to talk about, Chaitra, how do you partner with Women in Cloud to get access to scholarships for anyone who's here, any person who has a group, any person who's running, a team that could really benefit from the scholarships that you have partnered with Microsoft to bring out to everyone? How can they partner with Women in Cloud for that?
Sarah, that was a fantastic question. I was like hoping you're going to ask me that. I personally feel is like we have partnered with Microsoft, and they care about the inclusion of women in the AI-driven economy. They truly do. And, coming from that philosophy of helping every human to realize the full potential, and also the organization to have their full potential, that value system aligns with me. And that kind of is what I care about for everyone who comes and touches Women in Cloud. So when we partner with organizations, if you are a company who are like, I think I am I echoing? No? Hold. Is it better? I think so. There you go. So if there are media companies and nonprofits, when we want to partner with them, usually we have a barter system. So we bring in the scholarships so we can distribute together, and we do joint go-to-market with them because that's a benefit for the media company. So they are giving the benefit for their audience, not just the content, but also something to get their audience ready. If it's a nonprofit ecosystem, then we say here is a scholarship that is available for you that you can give. Again, it's a value-driven partnership. And in mutually, we are doing is go to market with them. If there are companies who they believe that they want to really do like what Microsoft is doing, we work with them to really establish a distribution engine of what is required. So that one requires funding, that requires executive buy-in. It's just a lot of work, and it starts usually with a pilot of 50 to 100 scholarship, and then it expands to thousands and hundreds of $1,000s of investment that's going into the ecosystem. But it's really the executives who make a decision. Right now, we are very grateful for having Microsoft give us access to over 5,000 cybersecurity scholarship for US market, so we can deploy that and get the market here. And for the global market, we have few scholarships. We still have that. It's not at the quantity of thousands of scholarship, but Debbie and Laura have made sure, working with their management and the entire leadership team, to make sure the global market also has that access for AI and cloud and cyber. Since we are at the cyber one, I would say, if you are not going to take it, please share it with your community, because they will be very thankful that you cared about them, for them to get ready in cyber roles. And one of the things we noticed, which is fascinating, was people who are applying for scholarship, they are the people, they either got hacked, the bank got, the bank got hacked, or their email got hacked, their family member got hacked, and that drove them to really make sure they protect their ecosystem and the customer, their immediate network. So they wanted to learn about how to protect. So basic understanding of a cybersecurity is critical for anybody on the planet, along with the AI skilling. Both are important at this moment.
I love that. It made me think too, our two panelists here are partnering with us today for this panel and to bring their information, their experience. And I just wanted to say to anyone who's watching right now, if you came over from Cybercrime Magazine, please use Steve20 as your referral code when you go in and apply for the scholarship. And also for Lisa, if you came over from the National Cybersecurity Alliance, please use Lisa20 so that we know that you came over from them, because we really appreciate their time. We want to make sure we're engaging with your guys' communities and getting those scholarships out to there as well.
Wow, I feel like we're competing, and I'm going to have to hold mine up. This is like American Idol.
I got these
20.
ready. I know, Steve20. Text in now. Text your votes. Yeah, I'm going to put that in the chat. That's funny. I do want to hop over to some quick questions. And then I'm going to have our wonderful producer, Carolina, walk us through how to apply for the scholarship very quickly. But I don't want to keep Lisa and Steve here more than they have to be. So let's jump over to Q&As. Thank you, everybody. We have so many questions here. There's a lot of upvotes. So I'm going to do the ones that have gotten the most upvotes. We're going to start with, it came from Anonymous, but the question is, and it received 7 upvotes, is, how do people navigate the transitions to cybersecurity with so many managers and companies turning to AI instead of diversifying and training their own workforce?
Be bold, go out to LinkedIn, and contact people directly, send out invitations, identify companies that you're interested in, use some of the resources we talked about today, and, jump over the hiring managers. That doesn't mean you can always do that, but you can certainly get out there and network and make the attempt.
Yes, Sarah, there was a cybersecurity memo that was released by Microsoft last week. Usually Microsoft sets their picture of what the new tone looks like in the tech industry. If you remember 2 years ago, it was AI narrative. So everybody was jumping on AI and stuff. Right now, they are saying is we want to protect the world, protect the people, protect the planet. So the cyber narrative has been integrated in everything. So you'll see over the next 1 year, cyber will be the new language for AI, not just they are independent, they are together. So if you are in AI, you also need to know cyber, because the data has to be protected, which the AI tools will be using. So keep that in mind, that if you are getting ready on cyber piece, you are in for a luck for the next 10 years, because those roles are opening up, and those are going to be very high paying roles.
All right, I'm going to move on to the next question. That way we can just get at least 1 or 2 more in. The next question was, what advice would you give to women who are currently starting their technology journey? What certifications or skills do they need to thrive in the cybersecurity space?
I'll chime in on this one. I think it's you can think of cyber as just one, sort of one field. But if you look at, especially NIST has done a really good job of breaking down all of the different job roles within cybersecurity. And so it's really about aligning your personality and what you enjoy with one of those roles. So rather than looking at it, I mean, I worked at a company that did training and certifications, and most people start with their Sec Plus. But I have some thoughts about the whole certification industry. There's a whole lot of free training out there from Microsoft and Google, and there's tons and tons and tons of free stuff before you go spend money on a certification. I know there's a gap between HR managers who want to see certifications before you even get an interview, but I'm hopeful that that'll eventually change. But I would take a really good look at all the different job roles that exist, try and meet people who work in those different functions. Because if you like to break things or take things apart and see how they work, that sort of interest, is really helpful for some job roles. But it's probably not helpful for like working in GRC. If you're a rule follower, you might really like to be in audit. It's such a broad field. You could be like me and start in training and awareness and start with, trying to figure out what makes people tick and trying to get their attention and trying to influence human behavior. You could really like doing an in-depth analysis and work in risk. It's such a broad field. So just figure out, what do you really enjoy? Don't try to fit yourself into the role. Look at it from the perspective of like, these are the kinds of things I like doing. And when I do these types of things, man, the day goes really fast because I'm having so much fun. Well, what types of roles do I get to do those types of things? And I apologize. I have to drop for an appointment. So I'm going to let you guys keep going.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for that information. And thank you so much for being here.
I'm going to
Thanks
add
for
one
having
quick
us.
thing to what Lisa said. Quickly, do a Google search, 50 cybersecurity job titles. So anyone who's out there, to build on what Lisa said, do that. And you're going to see a lot of positions with soft skills. It's not just coding.
Amazing. All right. Do we want to do one more question, Chai, or do you want to move on to having Carolina explain the scholarships so people can take advantage of them?
I think it's Marissa who has to come and explain. So we'll have Marissa. She is the expert. So let her come and explain
Okay.
how the scholarships work. Because once you know it, it becomes very, very helpful for you to really apply for it. But at the end of the day, when you're thinking about educating yourself, think about that you're creating a recipe. And, if you're creating a recipe, you need to have a lot of skill, cutting skills, cooking skills, and all the understanding to make that particular recipe is the same thing in tech. So that one will help you really acquire AI skills, cyber skills, cloud skills. You need to understand the foundation because it's very services based. And the cybersecurity education that Marissa will talk about, she will explain how it works so you can apply for it, and also ask your network to apply for it because it's our responsibility to get everybody ready on cyber. Go ahead, Marissa.
Hello, everyone. I've been in the chat a little bit, so it's nice to, I guess, for you all to see my face because I still can't see yours. But as Chaitra said, yeah, our goal is to get people into the cybersecurity workforce. And as you see on the screen, we have over 5,000 scholarships. Our goal is to get 5,000 people in the US certified by December 2025. So you can be a part of that, and your network can be a part of that, and your friends and your family and everyone can be a part of it, because there's a huge gap, not only a gender gap, but just a gap in resources and employees for the cybersecurity field. And it is a growing and important thing that we need. So I'll drop some links when I'm finished talking to make sure you all have the right resources. But I want to say, I did see some Canadians and some people from India in the chat. We do have a global option as well, and it does have a cybersecurity pathway there too. So we are not excluding our global community. So all of those resources will be shared, but the process is pretty simple. You go to our website and you just submit an application. The most tedious part of that application is a 250-word personal essay just explaining about why the scholarship is necessary, why you're choosing cybersecurity. Give us some details about what you want to do, what your goals are with the certification or with this pathway. And then we have a couple weeks of time to process those applications. And then you get invited onto Coursera. For those that don't know, Coursera is an online learning platform, and this will give you the resources to go through 9 courses of cybersecurity information and be prepared to take that official Microsoft certification exam, which, this is the fun part, we give you a free voucher to take. So at the end of the day, the goal is that you spend no money and can get resources and skilling. And as Lisa mentioned, there sometimes can be a gap between that certification phase and the actual employment phase. So Women in Cloud is also working on building resources so you all can have real world experience and have things that you can put in your portfolio or on your resume as examples of the work that you've achieved and things that you've done in the field. But we have a lot in the works, and we already have a lot that is available for you right now. So I'll put some links in the chat, but thank you all for being here. And I hope to see all of your names on that application pool when I'm reviewing them, and hope to see friends and family saying that you sent them. They can literally say, add me in the other referred by section and make sure that your name is included so we can see that we're spreading the wealth to everyone.
Thank you so much. And I was just thinking too, there's a lot of questions about getting started and not having certifications. This scholarship could fill that gap for a lot of people. So please be sure to check that out. I also want to plug Steve and Lisa one more time and thank them for being so generous with their time and their information and their expertise. Steve has Cybersecurity Ventures and also Cybercrime Radio and Cybercrime Magazine. He is a wealth of resources, so please check out everything that he's talked about and also just go through and read the articles. It is so informational. And Lisa also has a National Cybersecurity Alliance, so please check out her website as well and all of the work that they're doing. Before we hop off, do we want to do the 2 gift cards and see if Steve was the most active here today?
I'll have Marissa or Carolina give the names. They can put it in the chat and we can bring them online and we can congratulate them.
Great.
So, Marissa, Carolina, do you have the names of the people who are very active?
There was a lot of talk today, and it was really nice to see. It was nice to see the emojis and the movie recommendations and the questions. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all the questions, but I do feel like a lot of the questions were about getting started and not having the certification. Things like this scholarship are a great way to get started. While we're waiting for the name, Steve, is there any other activations or initiatives that you can think of that people should take advantage of?
You know, we covered so much ground. I just want to give a shout out to Microsoft, since I know they're sponsoring. They have people there in the company. They really do give back a lot. They've come on our media to share. We're not the largest platform. There's plenty of other places they can go, but they want to reach as many people as they can. We have Shera DeGrippo. She's the director of threat intelligence at Microsoft. She's a regular guest with us. So she's on. She's got a great vibe. We've had Amy Hogan-Burney. She's the GM of the Digital Crimes Unit, and all of them have, you know, such great messages for women in cybersecurity. I'll save the best for last, Jakal. She is fantastic, and she always makes the time to answer every question, you know, for anybody who pulls at her, and there are a lot of people. So just all of those people at Microsoft. We had Sarah Gilbert come on with us. She's a community builder at Microsoft, and she's also an opera singer. So if anybody wants to hear a woman in cyber sing opera, then, you know, check out our podcast. So thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Very cool. And I would love to work with you because you have the media angle. We have so much power, because one of the things I saw for serving 7 billion people, there was only 5 movies. That's ridiculous. We should make some more, I think. That's just me coming out of the first reaction to it. But saying that one, yes, we have to fix that. But we have 2 people who were phenomenal today, who actually were active. So Laura, you are one. Congratulations. And Cynthia Cunningham is the second person who was very active in the chat today. So Laura, what was your takeaway from the conversation? I know you were.
All right. So many great things there. I'm going to just choose two. Representation matters, and the work that each of you are doing, whether it's icons or your podcasts or your books or your work in associations, is really important for women, young girls, and career pivoters to see the opportunities and take advantage. And then the other takeaway is really that the opportunities are there, right? Those certifications and jumping on those scholarships and using your network and using the soft skills that you already have to jumpstart and get the hard skills, or whatever you want to call them, to be noticed and take advantage of this career opportunity. I spent most of my, since 2002 in cyber and security, I'd say, and so many great problems to solve, so many great people to team up with and partner with, and the problems just keep getting larger, so the impact is getting larger.
Again, thank you, Laurie, for being very active, because you are our icon. You are a role model in the network. So we want to make sure the way you are leading all of us is what the community will actually showcase the same thing. And also, Sarah, congratulations for really beautifully hosting this session.
Oh,
we are
thank
so
you.
lucky to have you in our network, and what a great work you did today.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure. It's such a pleasure to learn from everyone. It's a pleasure to hear, the advances being made and what we can achieve in the future.
Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Chaitra. We'll also say thank you to Lisa, who had to move on because she's very busy, but I really, truly appreciate your time. And I know everyone in the chat is super grateful. I already see people being like, please do the movie post together. So we have people looking forward to our next thing, but please visit Cybercrime Radio, Cybercrime Magazine, Women in Cloud's website, as well as National Cybersecurity Alliance website for more information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.